Welcome to my class, Lighting for Everyone. It's called Lighting for Everyone because I'm going to teach you how to light for any type of subject whatsoever. And there's a little trick and a way of thinking about light that I'm going to unlock for you in this class. And it's got everything to do with where I am right now, outside in the shadow of a tree. Natural light photographers know that as soon as you step from the hard light of the sun directly on your subject, where it's unflattering, into the shade of a tree, that's the most beautiful light you can find on location. We're going to take the same concept and apply it to studio lighting. I'm going to reference it throughout this class, but I want to start off right away with a breakdown of what's happening here. As I'm in the sun, I'm being lit directly by that hard light of the sun. It's our one light source that we have in the sky. When I step out of that direct light into the shade, I'm cutting the hard part of the light and I'm relying on all the billions and trillions of light points that are bouncing off our environment. Whether it's off the ground or a building behind you or around you, vehicles, whatever you've got around you, those billions of little light sources become a dynamic and interesting base for your lighting. It's super flattering, and we're going to show you how to create the most soft yet directional, beautiful images that will wow your clients and change your portfolio forever. Let's dive right in. Here we go. Let's talk about sync speed. Your shutter speed, which is the length of time that your shutter is open on the camera, actually behaves a little bit differently when we're in the studio shooting with strobes. So I'm going to take you through it. It's a little bit of like a hump we have to get over, something technical, but just stay with me on this. I'm going to explain it. If you're already familiar with why sync speed and shutter speed is a little bit different when you're shooting with strobe in the studio, you can go ahead and skip straight to the next video. But for everyone else, this is a good little refresher. So for the sake of understanding how strobe affects the image when your as far as your shutter speed is concerned, I like to imagine that we are inside a super dark cave. I'm going to put my headlamp on. If we're shooting in a cave that's completely dark, there's not a single amount of light ever, all we're going to see, no matter how long the shutter is open, is the moment when the flash goes off. That's the only moment, if I have the headlamp off, that's the only moment that's ever going to introduce light onto our shutter, no matter how long the shutter is open. So you could have it open for an infinite amount of time, and when the flash fires, that's the only moment that's going to affect the frame. So let me show you how this actually works when we're taking pictures. I'm going to bring in my beautiful easel. So if we're in a cave, and this line represents the length of time that the shutter is open, let me draw. That's supposed to be an infinity symbol. If this shutter is open for an infinite amount of time, you will never have ambient light entering in if you're in a completely black cave. So there's a moment if you did fire a strobe, a flash inside the cave, it would happen sort of at a moment right here, and that's the only light that's going to affect your image. So you could have your shutter open for millennia. There's no light until a flash goes off. If you're not in a cave, let's say you have your shutter open for 1 second. Let's say we're in this studio where we are right now. I have some lights lighting me. There's going to be a little bit of light constantly coming into and hitting the open shutter for the entire second. If the strobe fires at any point during that, let's say it's here, we have a lot of light at that very moment, adding together with the light that's ambient. So if you have your shutter open for 1 second, it's going to be gathering a lot of the ambient light, but the moment that matters is really where the flash goes off right there. Let's say we then go down to like 1/200th of a second, or maybe even 1/80th of a second. And that's our shutter speed. Well, that flash is going to go off somewhere in here. And the amount of ambient light that's coming in is much less because you leave less time for the ambient light, the light that's already around you. You know, if you're shooting outside, you're going to have a lot of light. If you're shooting in a studio with lights on, or in someone's house or in your garage, you're going to have light that's coming in from the scene. You need that also for your camera to be able to focus on something. So if you get the shutter speed down to like 1/200th or 1/180th, you're gathering less of that ambient light than if you had it open for 1 second. I hope you're following along with this, the nerdiest part of this entire class, because this is the only technical part that we're going to get into. If you make the shutter really short, like let's say 1/500th of a second, you're going to gather very little ambient light, but something else starts to happen, which is when the flash goes off and when the shutter is open, those two moments might not have enough time to coordinate. And that's why it's called sync speed. So sync stands for synchronized, or synchronization, I guess. Synchronized speed is the camera and the flash have to be able to synchronize. So you need to find the balance between the shutter being open long enough for the flash to fire while the shutter is open, and it not being open too long that you're getting too much ambient light. I know for all the natural light photographers, you're so used to, and I do this when I'm shooting natural light, like photojournalism or an event, I'm so used to turning the dial and changing my shutter speed to quickly adjust my exposure. Well, in the studio, the only moment that matters, you want to be in this cave-like condition, and I'll show you that in the camera in a minute. You want to, for the sake of what the camera sees, you want to be in a cave so that the only moment that matters is when the flash fires. So whether you have, if you were shooting in a cave, whether you have your shutter open for an infinite amount of time, 1 second or 200th of a second, what you want is to not have, or at least have control over the ambient light in the studio, so that when the shutter fires, the only thing that's hitting your sensor is the flash. That's all you want. So I'm going to actually demonstrate what happens when we have both of these scenarios where we're shooting too long, so we're getting too much of that ambient light. You get something called ghosting, which I'll show you. Or if you're shooting with a shutter speed too fast, you get those black bars across the screen, which I'll also show you in a little demonstration. So for the next part of this, I'm going to bring in my model, and we're going to actually use this ghosting scenario. I'm going to show you in the camera. I'm going to explain what I want you to do, and I'm going to reference over and over throughout this class is at the beginning of each segment, I'm going to do an ambient light test. And I'm going to show you in the camera how we do that. I'm going to call in our model for today, Reagan. She's got a wonderful outfit on. Lovely. Good morning. Hello. All right. So I'm going to shoot throughout this class, unless I say otherwise, and I'll call it out throughout, at the same camera settings. Let me show you, and I'll explain why. I'm going to shoot at ISO 200. If you want, you can shoot at 100, but I like to stay at 200. So I'm going to stay at 200. I'm going to shoot at f5.6. Now, why do I shoot at 5.6? In the studio, I'll show you exactly what happens if I open up to, let's say, 2.8, which is the maximum that this camera will go to. And I'm not going to have the trigger on for this. If I take a picture without the trigger firing, so I just took a picture, this photo is without the trigger firing, I'm at ISO 200, I'm at 200th of a second on my shutter speed, I'm at f2.8. Because I've opened up on the aperture, I'm letting more light in, and I'm getting in a lot of the ambient light that is lighting me so I can record this class for you. So if I'm at f2.8, I'm getting too much of the light. If I go to 5.6, there's almost no light at all on that frame. It's an acceptable amount. It's not going to cause me too many issues. Now, some people will ask, well, why can't I shoot at like wide open, f2.0, f2.8? And when I started in the studio, I wanted to rely instead on soft light and the strength of composition in my frame instead of relying on that narrow depth of field that so many natural light photographers really rely on. And as soon as I sort of changed my mindset on like, let's make it soft through lighting, let's make the composition the strength, that's when it started to click for me. And it opens up a whole world, because if you want to really start photographing families or photographing multiple people at once, you can't shoot them at f2.0. You'll need a wider range of focus like you get at f5.6. So I always start at 5.6. I'm going to be at ISO 200 always. It's just, or 100. I think 200 is sort of like the native point where the camera performs the best. It doesn't matter if you want to go to ISO 100, it's fine. And then my shutter speed is always going to end up at either 1/200th, which is where my camera goes, or some cameras, or 1/180th, depending on your camera model. Both are fine. That's sort of a sweet spot to start with. And if I amend it at any point during this class, I will tell you. So I'm now set at ISO 100. My shutter speed is 1/200th, and I'm at 5.6 on my aperture. So when I take a test shot with these settings, I get a little bit of light, but it's almost imperceivable just because she's wearing a very sparkly dress, which is totally fine with me. I do not have the trigger on. So this is the device that communicates to the flash that I'll be using to photograph this. And when the shutter opens, this fires the flash on my lights. And this is the magic piece that, without wires, does that. They come in all shapes and sizes, different manufacturers. You need to match it. It's usually made by the same manufacturer as your lights. In my case, I'm using Elinchrom lights, and I have an Elinchrom trigger. If you're using Profoto lights, you're most likely going to need a Profoto trigger. If you're using any brand, you get the same brand of trigger. That's how that works. They're not, unfortunately, not universal. They also make them in really complex versions. This is the simple Elinchrom trigger. I love a simple trigger. It doesn't need to, make me a cup of coffee. I just can put this on and it fires the lights, and there's some with screens. I'm not such a big fan of those because they add a lot of complexity. So I'm going to put the trigger on, and we're going to move a light into place. We won't discuss the lighting setup for this because I'll get into it later, but we'll bring the light in. I just want to show you. So with these camera settings, let's see how that looks. Lovely. We're already in a really nice place. So if she's moving from here, let's get a couple of moving shots. The flash is going to catch just beautiful, Reagan. The flash is just going to catch the bits. It's going to, as far as the camera is concerned, when I take the trigger off, we have a almost completely blacked out frame. As soon as I add the trigger, I know that the only thing affecting my frame, the only light in the image, is my flash. If I have lots of other light coming in, I don't know that I can actually control what my flashes are doing. So that's the step number one. Always do an ambient light test with the trigger off. Make sure that frame is blacked out or almost blacked out. You'll get away with it. And if you don't, I'm going to show you what happens if we kind of get that wrong. If you have a lot of ambient light, like I've had it where I go into a conference room, we have low ceilings and they have those recessed ceiling lights. There's a magic little trick, and it's called, let me tear off a piece for you here. Now this will do. It's called cinefoil, which is like, it's like black aluminum foil, or for the people in the Commonwealth, black aluminium foil. And with a little bit of gaff tape, I like to, it's not going to burn very easily, so I like to cover those like spotlights if you're shooting in a conference room, because they're always going to impact your frame. So if you're doing a test shot at your preferred settings, ISO 200, 5.6 aperture, and your shutter speed of 1/200th of a second, you're going to see if you have too much of that ambient light, and you need to do the work to control it. So having a little bit of cinefoil, I just fold up a little piece and I always have it in my bag. So if there's a light that's shining directly down, and every time you do your ambient light test, you still have light on your subject, you can just impress your clients by bringing out this magical black aluminum foil and just gently, don't destroy your client's ceilings, kind of cover up those ambient lights or whatever lights are on if you can't turn them off. People ask me like, oh, how do I make sure I don't have the ambient light? Well, you need to, your first step is you go into a space and you make sure you control your ambient light and you get them not to interfere with your ambient test. So now we have like kind of the perfect camera settings. I think the exposure looks very nice on her. I think it's going to be nice and flattering. What happens if we get that ghosting, where we get too much of the ambient light? So I'm going to change the shutter speed on here to like 1/20th of a second. And I'll show you. So you see that change? I'm going to put both images up on the screen. The change that happens here is that the camera is catching so much more of the ambient light. I'll show it to you without the trigger on. And it's catching that ambient light. When I add the trigger, it's going to add the flash, and together it makes this image. I actually don't mind it, but if Regan now starts to move, let's try that. She's going to do some dance moves. Beautiful. We've got this dress especially because I know it would like sparkle. You can see in these images, let's pick one here. Here, you have a lot of that movement on the side of her dress, which, because it's like a sparkly dress, I was like, we can make this really nice and actually create something out of it. But it's also going to be blurry on her face. So that's my ambient light, the light that's around in the scene. And if you're shooting like in a daylight studio with a lot of light, you're going to have to figure out how to control for that, impacting and adding together with your flash. In this class, all of the other segments, I'm going to make sure my ambient light is controlled. I'm going to do an ambient light test every single segment. So you get this ghosting effect. If this is happening and you have movement, you know that the camera is open for so long. Yes, the shutter is happening at the right moment, but you're getting a lot of that light that's around in the space also impacting you. And that's where, you would have you would need to adjust your shutter speed to make sure that I go back to 200th of a second. So let's do the similar movement. I'm going to show you now. I've set it back to 1/200th of a second, the correct sync speed for my camera. Let's do a similar movement. I'm going to show you the difference of how that looks. Beautiful. And we don't get any of that. Thank you, Regan. We don't get any of that ghosting on the dress actually at all. And it's super crisp and clear. But you can use it for nice effect if you had to. So I actually like this ghosting effect so much that I'm inspired and I want to shoot a little bit. Regan is also a dancer, so she's going to kind of vibe. I don't know anything about dance, so I'm glad we have her. I'm going to change my shutter speed. Let's try even like 1/15th of a second and do a little bit of movement. Yeah. Beautiful. I'll go down to 1/20th. I'm going to be at 1/20th of a second, so it's, as far as the camera's concerned, I'll show you what that looks like with that ambient light. That's how much ambient light I have. So that's that ghosting. That's the part of the ghosting. So you're kind of like doing two things. You're combining two sources of light together. And when I add my flash in, that's what it looks like. It also really lifts the shadows, which is quite nice. So now we're going to really have, maybe we could even like do a little walking shot from one side to the other. Start from this side. Perfect. Yeah. Talk this way. Yeah. Perfect. And go. Yeah. We could even walk a little faster, I guess. Let me see. Yeah. Give me a second here. Let's change my focus mode. Perfect. And go. Yes. You know what we could do, actually? This is so cool. but you can see it's really like ghosted. What if we get you to walk right to the center and then turn towards me and do a step like that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, perfect. As you're already there. And 1, 2, 3, go. Beautiful. Yes. Oh my God. It just has like this sense of movement and everything. I love it. But you know, I wanna show this because I really want to show you kind of what that ghosting effect is. And this, we've made it beautiful, but if you see this, you have ambient light in your shot. When you take the shot with strobe, it should be super crisp and clean. We kind of like styled it with this shiny dress because you could really see those little highlights coming through. But I just love the way this looks. Yeah, Regan, very cool. Do that again, that whole movement. You can do it from the other side. Perfect. And just let the arms like flop like really kind of 90s fashion, very relaxed. Okay, let's try that. And go. Yes. Good. And then let's make that movement really smooth. I'm wondering if you can just like walk and come in like that. Does that make sense? Like you walk and then just, yeah, exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. And go. Nice. Yeah, good. Let's see if we could just do like a leg kick or just like maybe a little flapper kind of movement. Yeah, perfect. Like your little dance party to yourself. This would be easier with music, but yeah, perfect. And I'm trying to see if we can keep your head just in the same place and then your body is just kind of moving. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Yes, that's nice. Good. So I don't want as much movement. Keep going, Regan. I'll just keep shooting while I talk. I don't want as much movement in the face, so we can maybe get a shot of the face without the ghosting, but the body has a lot of that going on. Perfect. I'm actually going to bring in hair and makeup as well, because I wonder if we can tease out a couple of pieces on the side there. Lovely. See how the sausage is made. Exactly. Beautiful. Yes. Perfect. And this is when you know I get really excited about shooting. I take it handheld and go. Perfect. That's lovely, Regan. Yeah, let the arms flop a little bit. Yeah, beautiful. Ugh, stunning. And eyes dead at the camera. Yeah, perfect. Fabulous. Okay, we have about 1,000 good images here, so that's fantastic. Excellent work. So there's so much you can do by understanding this. Like I now leaned into getting that ghosting, but you know, I've got so many nice images here, really leaning into that. Let's go to another look, and I'm going to show you what happens when your shutter speed is too fast. So here I took my shutter speed to 1/20th of a second, down from where it should have been at 1/200th of a second, and I've got some of that ghosting. While I was doing the shoot, I also went back to 1/200th of a second just to get some really clean and crisp images, and the lighting I'll talk about in another segment. So let's go. We're going to do an outfit change, and we're going to move into showing you when you get that shutter speed too fast, so the camera cannot talk to the flash quickly enough, and what happens is you get a black bar across the screen. I'll show you when that happens. Before I show you the effect of shooting too fast, so exceeding your sync speed in the studio, where the flash can't synchronize itself with the camera to get the shot while the shutter is open, I want to just show you something that can trip you up. In my camera, there's a little setting called view mode, and there's it can show the effects of settings or adjust for ease of viewing. And sometimes when you're in the studio and you've got your camera set to show you what you should be seeing if you're shooting ambient light, when you go into the studio, when you look through the viewfinder on a mirrorless camera, it'll look completely blacked out. So you have to find the setting that just shows you on my camera, on the Nikon Z8, it's show effects of settings or adjust for ease of viewing. On another camera, it might be called something else. But if you're looking through the screen and you're seeing just a black image, the camera is showing you essentially your ambient light test, but you want to adjust it for ease of viewing so that the camera, you can see, it's not going to show you the exact preview of your settings at 200 shutter speed, 200 ISO and 5.6 on your aperture, but it's going to show you a much brighter image like it's doing here. You know, if we compare my ambient light test, I'm going to take the trigger off. That's a completely black frame versus this, which is showing me what the ambient light sees, and it's not adjusting for, for the actual settings. So it's a little bit of a thing that can trip you up. The other thing, I'm going to bring in our lovely model Reagan. We've had an outfit change, and we're going to have another fun little shoot. Just why not? Reagan, please come in. Lovely. And I'll start you off here on this stool. Let me see if that's the right height. That seems fine. And we're just going to do, like, I think some structural stuff, because we've got like this hair story, really bright colors, make a really classic image, just to have a nice image to use for the example of why we don't want that black bar creeping into your image. Okay, I'll give you 2 half apple boxes for your foot. Let's see, just to give it some like shape. Perfect. Good. Now, oh, one other thing. If you shoot in the studio, so we've gone through kind of your ambient light test, you want to make sure, okay, I'm going to take the test shot. I'll have the camera pointed on Reagan. Good. I'm checking here, it's almost completely black. My ambient light isn't making a difference at those same settings. Aperture 5.6, ISO 200, shutter speed 1/200th of a second. I still need ambient light. You can't shoot in a black, completely lightless cave, because your camera won't be able to focus on anything. So you have to find that middle ground where the camera needs light to be able to focus on the subject. And it'll make your life easier if you have some ambient light. That's also another reason why I don't just shoot in at aperture like 1.8 or 2.0, which would make the image super soft. I would be having so much ambient light. So to counteract that, I would have to get rid of all of my ambient light, and then I can't focus. My camera can't have anything to focus on. So you do need a little bit, but it's like that balance. You want to have the camera be able to focus on something like it can right now. I already can see this is going to be a beautiful shot. Let's do a test shot. But you don't want too much that when you do your ambient light test without the trigger, you're getting any of that ambient light affecting you. So let's see. I've got my shutter speed at 200. So, oh, that's, okay, let's go home. That was perfect. See ya. Amazing, amazing. So this is the correct shutter speed. What happens as I bring my shutter speed up? So I'm going to go to 1/250th of a second. And you start to have that bar creeping in. So what's happening here is the shutter doesn't have time, or the camera, depending on your camera system, the flash doesn't have time to synchronize with the moment when the shutter is fully open. So you kind of have for every camera system, and then we lose so much of her face. And as I go further and further, like now I'm at 1/640th of a second, you get that black bar more and more coming into the frame. So that's all you want to watch out for. When you have that black bar creeping in, sometimes, by the way, depending on your camera system, even at 1/200th, you'll have a little line just at the top of the frame, or just on the side of the frame, that looks a bit like a black bar, a little bit less light on that portion of the frame. That means your camera is exceeding the shutter speed where it can sync, where the flash and the light can talk together really easily. So that's just something to look out for. I want you to walk away from this knowing that if you get that black bar creeping into your image, your shutter speed is too fast. So you're going to find the sync speed. Now, every camera, depending on the type of shutter, and there's many variations, has a different maximum sync speed, and sometimes the manual lies a little bit. So the only reliable way is to just take a test shot. If you get the black bar on your image when you're doing strobe, then you know. But for me, on this camera, I know that if I start at 5.6 on my aperture, I'm not going to get too much ambient light in. If I start at 1/200th of a second on my shutter speed, I know I'm getting the least amount of ambient light before I run into this problem with the black bar creeping in. And I'm going to start at ISO 200 because I know I'm not going to have noise. It's going to look good for the camera. We're in a really solid place. That's why I start here, and that's going to be the settings for the rest of the class. Now, having covered all that boring stuff, let's get into actually shooting some of this, because I'm really excited about what we can do here. I'm just going to riff. We're just going to have a little bit of fun with it. Why not make some nice images? And because you can always tell I get very excited about shooting when I take the camera off the tripod. All right, Reagan is just going to throw me some shapes, and let's just shoot this. Beautiful. And again, in this lighting setup, I'm not going to teach this right now, but we will get into it in different segments. Let me see some of your right arm. Beautiful, beautiful. That's a lovely moment. Good. Give me your right shoulder a bit more, Reagan. Yeah, perfect. Give me some off-camera moments, maybe. Beautiful. Can I just get a hair adjustment, please? Patty, you can come in. Don't be afraid. I work closely with hair and makeup artists if I can. It's always nice. If I'm really in a bind, I would just go in, ask the model's permission, can I touch your hair, and adjust it. But I have someone that's doing it. And because sometimes also I'll just hire a makeup artist to get the day started. Yeah, perfect. She's going to hang out over there. You can even have a seat, Patty. Lovely. I'll bring in the makeup artist to start the day, get the model started. And then, sometimes it's a budget thing. I don't necessarily can't keep them around all day or they're busy. So I would then, if I had to adjust the hair, I would go over to the model, ask if I have permission to touch the hair to adjust and do that adjustment myself. Good. All right, beautiful. Maybe we can bring that right hand onto like your leg here. Yes. Good. I think this is an image that serves Reagan really nicely. Ugh, fantastic. What if you put both hands together in front? Like, yeah. Good. And turn your torso towards me just a touch, your whole body actually. Yeah, good. And I actually like what's happening with the feet too. Nice. So this is really beautiful. You've got that. The red on the red is working really nice. And I'll just show you again, if I go to my shutter speed gets too fast, we get that line creeping in. Kind of like, it looks like there's a door I'm shooting through or something. I guess you could use this to effect, but I don't want to. So yeah, you can just see that black frame comes in when I go to 1/250th of a second. If I go to 1/320th of a second, try saying that fast 3 times. It gets even further, 1/400th of a second. We almost lose her completely. So I'm just going to go back to 1/200th of a second. Beautiful off-camera moment there. Lovely. Good, Reagan, give me a profile, like your profile. So you're looking directly 90 degrees away. Oh, yeah, perfect. Bring your left elbow back. Yes. Good. Maybe put the hand on the stool, your left hand. Yeah. By the way, I've trained myself over the years, and it's a great little trick for photographers to learn. I would look at my subject, look at my hand that matches theirs, and go, that's my left hand. And then I'd be like, can you move your left hand? So in the early days, I'd be like this. Okay, perfect. Would you move your left arm, please? Like that. Perfect. Ah, glorious. Okay, bring the chin up a bit from there. Good. And maybe make this moment happen like towards this spot over there. Perfect. Yes. Great. Relax your right arm. Beautiful. Your left arm can come back into your lap. And by the way, I'm not doing some crazy posing thing here. I'm not a posing maven. I'm just like, let's try different things. Let's think about the hands, the wrists, the elbows, the legs, the body position. If we keep changing that up, we keep trying different things, it gives the model something to do. It gives your subject something to do. I would do this with a non-model also. Hey, try moving your left hand here. It's not that it's going to be good. It's just, it keeps them engaged. It keeps them moving. And eventually, it takes a little bit longer with non-models, but you eventually do find something that works for every person. If you just keep trying, make one change, take a picture, see how it looks, that's the magic formula for posing for me. And just try to remember not to keep the shoulders and the hips and the knees and the elbows all stacked up in a straight line. But as soon as you kind of get those motions where they're not stacked anymore, you start to have interesting poses. And there's always a moment where your subject is gonna kind of fall into something that's really organic to them. Like Reagan is doing something right now that I really like. Where you were was good. Perfect. Really nice, really strong. Fantastic. Good. Let me try with a posing table and just see how we can do some leaning shots. This is supposed to be a shutter speed demonstration, but I'm having too much fun shooting. So, not a bad thing. I love that. Perfect. You can bring that in right towards you. Yeah, and I'm not going to get the feet, so you can, yeah, you don't have to worry. About that. Perfect. And I think, Reagan, for here, if you bring your right arm onto the posing table and bring the left back a little bit, so the other way around, yeah, you kind of get like that really beautiful line. Beautiful. Can I bring the hair, like, can you try just tuck it around so it's coming? Yeah. Beautiful. Get a like little behind the scenes shot for Patty there. Lovely. Yes, this is so great. This is so great. Bend the right elbow just a touch. Yeah, maybe even stay back there and just bring that elbow in. Yeah, there. Bring the hands together. Beautiful. That's great. Wow. Okay, now twist yourself so your left shoulder goes back. Well, that's also nice. Yeah. Try the other way. Beautiful. There it is. Yeah. And just relax it. Make it your own from here. Yeah. Lovely. That's fantastic, actually. Nice. Reagan, maybe get like a little lean moment going. Beautiful. Fantastic. I love that. It's just stunning. Let me get off camera. Yeah. Wonderful. I'm just going to go handheld for this, shoot a little bit more. Thank you all for watching along. You didn't expect this in a sync speed video, I bet. Lovely. Nice. Try right. Yes, 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 yes. Amazing. Beautiful. Reagan, I think that covers us off really nicely. So to wrap up, I just want to give you to remind you, do your ambient light test. I've done lots of pictures now with strobe. If I take a shot without strobe, with my settings I start at shutter speed 200 of a second. My aperture is at 5.6. I'm going to be at 200 on my ISO. That is such a solid place for me to start. I want you to try to think about lighting as there are so many factors that can go wrong. You know, if you are going into the studio for the first time, it's utterly overwhelming. I understand that. If you've watched this video, set those settings. I feel like you don't even need to necessarily understand every part of what we went over. If you just start at those settings, make sure you take your ambient light test, take the trigger off, take a shot, and you have it mostly blacked out so that you have almost no light coming into the frame. You're going to be in a good place. The place I don't want you to be starting from is having lots of ambient light in your frame, and then you add your strobe and your flash, and you can't even figure out what's what and what's coming from where. I want you to start at this solid place where we build a strong foundation from here. So for anyone that wants to shoot with constant light, the considerations change a little bit. Of course, now I'm not going to have the trigger on because I'm not triggering flashes. So I'm going to take that off. And the principle of doing an ambient light check is exactly the same. So I've got the same settings. I'm at 1/200th of a second at f5.6, ISO 200. So let me take a test frame, and I've got pretty much no light whatsoever. With constant light, if I change my shutter speed, let's say I go down to 1/100th of a second, I'm going to start picking up more of the environment, but I'm just going to adjust my settings until I start getting the ambient light actually coming in, because it's actually kind of safe now to do that. So let's say I open up my aperture a little bit. I could go to f4, and again, my ambient light test changes a little bit because I can afford to check. So here, at f4, at 1/100th of a second, I'm probably getting a little bit too much of the ambient light around us. So I'm going to stay at 5.6. I think that's safe. Or maybe I could go to f5, and our shutter speed can go to 1/125th of a second. So I'm at 1/125th of a second on shutter speed. I'm at aperture 5. I'm at ISO 200. And I've just come to that place by doing my ambient light test. Right now, I'm not adding my own constant lights to the scene. That's, again, my foundation, if I'm shooting with constant light, to see how much light is coming in from the environment. Now, there's a little bit of a funny thing that happens, which is that your job as photographer, if you're using constant lights, becomes so much more than just photography. You know, we've climbed onto roofs to block skylights, put fabric over skylights, blacked out windows. We've, like I showed you with the Cinefoil, the aluminum foil, we've blacked off kind of recessed ceiling lamps, taken out light bulbs. Your job becomes controlling the ambient light. The other change that happens is you no longer need that ambient light. So if you're in a completely blacked out studio, you're actually in a really good place. If you are in the cave and you're shooting with constant light, you're kind of in a good place because your camera will have light to use to focus. There's a couple of other considerations that we'll go into a bit later, like, sometimes you're going to have trouble with your constant light overpowering the ambient light, and that's a really real consideration, and it's kind of why flash was invented and why I still like to use flash. We're really butting into here the reason why people use flash, because flash puts out a lot of light in a very short burst of time and can completely overpower all your ambient light. So in this case, my ambient light test shows me that we're getting a little bit of like highlights from some light stands that are bouncing light off. And for this demonstration, I'm going to show you with the, I have a Nanlite FC500B here. The B means you can change, you can change the color temperature on this unit. If you don't have the B version, it's a little bit cheaper, but it only has the daylight adjustment for the light. So Mike's going to help us turn this on. I'm going to use myself as a test subject. I've got a Nanlite Softbox Parabolic 90. It's a little bit like a Octabox by other manufacturers. And let's turn it on and see what happens. So I'm already in a good place with my ambient light test. I'm probably going to move back a little bit here. And my assistant Magnus is going to take pictures of me. So Magnus is going to take some pictures of me. Go ahead. And depending on how much light you're going to get in, I'm not doing like a beautiful, that's fine, Magnus, thank you. I'm not going to do a beautiful light setup. I just want to show you for the sake of sync speed that having that solid foundation where we did the ambient light test just as we would with strobe is the best starting point, because then you know the lights that you're adding, whether they be constant or flash, you know that they are the ones creating the lighting look you want. And again, it's kind of one of those things that stops you from tripping up in other places to make sure you have your ambient light test and then you're building your lights as you go. So that's as simple as I like to keep it when I'm doing constant light. You want to always be able to control your environment, do the work you need to block the ambient light sources. If the sun is streaming from a skylight right above, I'm going to need to find a way to block that out so that I don't have to fight it with my ambient light. This now is at 20% power, I believe. Okay, it's at 100% power, so which is fine. I think we found the right exposure for that. We'll get into kind of how I light with constant lights in further segments, but again, the ambient light test is the place to start with this when you're shooting constant light.